Our next guest is and has been a jack of all trades and master of quite a few. Without further ado, my friend Kile Ozier. Kyle, welcome.
Hi, David.
Now, we were talking about the first time we met. It's been a while ago.
Yes, and as I'm just so impressed now that I'm back in town to see what you've built, because when I first met you, you were this dewy-eyed youth.
I love it, a dewy-eyed youth. I can put that on a sampler.
You can even quote me.
I will. Well, you know, actually, you've got a better title. How do you describe yourself? An itinerant creative.
Yeah, that would be me.
So where did that come from?
Well, I kept, because I move all over the place, and what I do is creative work, and I'm really unnicheable. I don't fit in pigeonholes. People who've seen my work know what I do, but it's usually, I move from context to context. I do a lot of film work, I do a lot of fundraisers, I write shows for theme parks, and I teach. I teach how to create experience, and I teach at a well-known technical company store on Stockton.
You can say it. It's named after fruit, apple.
Yeah,
it's all right.
yes.
Yeah. So when I met you, you were the chairman and founder of what was then called Friends of Oscar, which now, of course, is Academy of Friends. Let's start there.
Okay.
How did that come about, and why is it no longer called Friends of Oscar? And I was there, so I remember, but for our viewers.
Yeah, well, it started, we were just having a conversation in the back about this very thing. It started just as an Oscar party the first year that I was in town, which was in 1980. And there were about 30 people, everybody I knew in the city. And the next year there were 60 because everybody had broken up with their current partners and found somebody new. And it just started growing, and it got to a point in just a few short years where it was way too big for me to even afford.
But it was always more than just a party. It was always a fundraiser,
yes,
correct?
I should be more, well, at first it was just a party, and it got too expensive. So I thought, well, if I'm going to charge for this party, and the idea was that you would come, like I had 12 televisions, and Steve Silver had loaned me some Oscar props. And
founder of Beach Blanket Babylon,
yes. So everybody just got together to watch the Oscars, but in a way that they could eat and watch and not have to sit around a table. Anyway, the short story is it got to a point where to pay for it I'd have to charge, but I charged enough to give money away. In the first year we gave $400 to St. Anthony Dining Room. And I didn't like the feeling of trying to make a profit to give the money away, so I decided to have it underwritten. And this is the first time I ever really asked anybody for money, and so now I can actually—
And not the last.
No, and I can now teach how to fundraise. And so I actually went to, somebody at a party asked me where the party was going to be the next year, because I used to move a lot. And I told them what it was going to be, and I said, but I'm going to do this different thing. I need to raise money to pay for the party so that 100% of the ticket price goes to the charity. The idea was that every year it would be a different charity where the need was greatest at the time in the context of AIDS Direct Care. And he said, well, how much money do you need to raise? And you'll love the figure. This is way back. I said, well, to give this party, I need to raise $6,000. He says, I'll give you $1,000. That was Larry Colton. And he was my first underwriter ever. And that was the beginning of, the next year I formed a committee, and 2 years later we were a nonprofit. And of course—
I was on the board at that time, and it has now become the second largest Oscar party in the world and the largest single AIDS fundraiser for one night in California, I believe. I mean, it's raised millions of dollars for AIDS, HIV. How does that make you feel?
I never expected. It's like a kid that you knew had potential, and it had more potential than you expected.
Yeah. So tell people who, there are people now going to Academy of Friends parties that weren't born when I was on the board, which is very distressing. But they look good in tuxes. That's okay. Why is it no longer called Friends of Oscar?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that, because I've been asked that. We have, or I say we, I'm not on the board anymore, but we had a very good relationship with the Academy. In fact, they would give us posters and tickets the following year to auction off. But what happened was in '87 or '8, when we were at the Nico, after they did Wolfgang Puck's party and the Vanity Fair party on TV, they cut to the Oscar party in San Francisco, to our party.
The National Academy Award coverage.
Right. And so the week after that, I got a letter from my friend at the Academy saying, well, you're way too public now. And really, it was just very congenial. They said, in order to protect our copyright, we have to send you a cease and desist. You have to change your name. They were very cool about it. So they're still friendly to us, or to me. And
I'm glad to hear that, because there's been a lot of stories. I mean, I remember the meetings about, well, what do we call ourselves now? And we finally came up with Academy of Friends.
Yeah, we had a contest, didn't we?
I think so. The memory fades, but it's been a while.
So,
but after that, where'd you jump to?
Well, I moved to Los Angeles. It actually was I'd like to share something a little more deeper on this, because I remember distinctly what happened. Is it was the 10th year of Academy of Friends. I had a partner who was very sick. He had AIDS. He's dead now, and he had moved home, and I had pretty much done everything I could do. I used to produce lots of galas and ceremonies. I was more the ceremonial guy at City Hall when I was here, and I had invited friends to become what became the board of directors of Friends of Oscar, and we had trouble with a staff person. I wanted him fired. I turned it over to the finance committee, all official, and the finance committee came back with their report, gave the report at this meeting in 1990. And at the end of the report, I said, "So, you fired him?" And they said, "Well, no, we decided to do this other thing." And I was so lucky. I have to say, I've cited this again and again in workshop and in personal experience, that it was like everything came into focus, and I thought, these people aren't doing this for you anymore. These people, this is their own mission. You can stay here and fight this and become a dinosaur. And I think every nonprofit and almost every company runs that risk. The visionary can become a dinosaur by holding on too tight. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna have to leave. And I turned to Larry Hashbarger and handed him the gavel. I said, "Larry, you finished the meeting. I said, I think it's time I leave. I'll see you guys at the party and I'll see you at the retreat, and it's all yours." And everybody's like, "What?" But it was so healthy for the organization.
So you didn't become a dinosaur, you evolved.
I got out. And I hope to say I have evolved by now. It's been a rough process since then. I moved to Los Angeles. I mean, I left town and stayed in contact with the organization, but I went to LA to see if I could make movies the way I do live things. And what I learned in Los Angeles is that the film industry can kill you.
Well, and it almost did.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You say you had a rough transition. I think that's being kind of understated. I mean, we followed you. A lot of people said, "Where's Kyle? Where's Kyle?" Because Kile Ozier was a brand. There were Kile Ozier events in San Francisco, which always meant big, over the top, fun.
Thanks, David.
But then you had a rough patch. Talk about that, if you would.
I did have a very rough patch. I moved to Los Angeles thinking that I'm very good at creating live experience and moving people en masse. And I wanted to see if I could make movies that way. And the short story is that I went through my 2 years worth of money in about 6 months. It got really bad. I was down to working for $100 a week as a location manager and living in my car. Nobody knew I was living in my car. I had a paid-for Beamer. So I would park it in a cul-de-sac in Coldwater Canyon. And when people go, "Where are you living now?" I go, "Oh, I got a place in Coldwater," But it got really bad. And I drank a lot. I ended up...
Did you know that was a problem before you went to LA?
It crossed my mind because I learned to drink in college and I would go there to celebrate. I didn't realize I would go there when I was sad as well. It was like my go-to place. And it got out of hand. I couldn't find a job. I would go through, every morning I'd get up and go through the want ads, go through Daily Variety, send out resumes. The matinees would start at about 11. I'd go to 2 movies, buy a bottle of wine, go home, drink it, and go to sleep. Not the healthiest regimen. Which is really phenomenal when we get to today. But just quickly, I ended up running my car into a utility pole. I was in the hospital for a month, in intensive care for 10 days, did a ton of damage. And when I got out of the hospital, I said to a friend of mine, I said, "Well, I think I need to see a shrink and I need to quit drinking." He's like, "Yes." So I quit. It's been 20 years last December.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So was it hard? Okay, that's a stupid question. I'm sure it was hard, but when you came out of the hospital, I mean, you were in traction. It was bad.
Yeah, I was.
Did you ever think you're going to go back to drinking or that life, or was it cold turkey?
It was cold turkey. And it's funny, I don't want to take too much time of yours, but LA, they have a come pick you up program because it's all about the car. And my car was an accordion by then. So I called. Somebody was going to pick me up that night at 6. 6 came and went. Nobody picked me up. I called the next day. Said, this isn't very supportive. And the guy was, "Oh my God, are you all right?" It's like, "Yeah, but are we going to do this?" So the next day, that day, he said, "Somebody will pick you up tonight." And nobody showed. I'm like, "Fine, I'll do this myself." So I really just quit cold turkey. And for a long time, I thought, well, maybe at the turn of the century, I'll have some champagne. And it got to that. It's like, well, I'm in so far now. So I just quit. And I'm lucky in that I am a very black and white person.
Right.
And I decided to quit, so I quit. And I'm better quitting cold turkey than trying to cut back.
So no 12-step for you. You were addicted to alcohol, and now you're addicted to not being addicted to alcohol.
Right. Well, and chocolate.
Oh, well,
I did replace it.
I don't know if that makes you wrap a
no
car
fool
around a pole,
eye.
but
Yeah, right.
But now, from alcohol and chocolate, I mean, I've seen the pictures. At first, I thought they were Photoshopped. There's like Kile Ozier on a stage in a posing trunk. You became an award-winning bodybuilder.
Well, I did. I started
at age 32.
Yeah, yeah. I actually let's see. I was in New York, and I was with a trainer. And the interesting story too is, and for all of you out there who are older than 30, after the hospital, I was working out at the gym, and two beautiful men came out and were working out next to me, and I just blurted out, I said, oh, it'd be great to have a body like that. And my trainer goes, you'll never have a body like that. And I was like, well, what am I doing then? So for the next several years, I worked out just to maintain. And then I got a trainer in New York, this great guy, and he's about 28, built like a fire plug, and he kept saying, you know, you have the perfect body for physique. I'm like, I'm 50, what are you, nuts? You know? Long and the short of it is, I went to his contest, was blown away at the excitement. I didn't realize how exciting bodybuilding was. And watching his body transform, just even though he was in really great shape, but kind of when he started shredding and you know melting, I thought, this is really fascinating. So I sat down with him and his trainer and said, okay, I know I have the discipline to do whatever it takes. What I want to know is it physiologically possible for me not to shame myself when I get on that stage? This was in September, next June at the Gay Games in Chicago. And they had me stripped down to my underwear, and it was like they were buying a horse. They're like, okay, turn around, turn around. I'm like, all right. Both straight guys. It was very funny. And the old Cuban guy says, all right, you can do it in 6 months, what you need to do.
Wow.
So I put my head down and got to Chicago. At the same time, I was also producing and directing the opening closing ceremonies for the game. So I did get a little cranky the last few weeks when I was shredding. Third, got a bronze.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Listen, in our last few moments, and I want to have you back. The interview is almost over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Tell us what you're doing now, and you've got a blog that is very interesting that you've just started.
I do. I moved back to town a year ago. I had visited enough. I was inspired by an experience at the Grove, and I've launched a blog called IMHO, in my humble opinion, which is sort of funny for friends of mine, which is about the creation of compelling experience, the methodologies and technologies that I've sort of developed and adopted to create.
And now you're going to share it with other people.
Yes, I am. I think it's time.
We've been speaking with Kile Ozier. I'm glad to say he's back. Hopefully you'll come back next week and watch us on 10%. I'm your host, David Perry. Thanks for watching.